Alrighty, what's going on, everybody? This is the first video in a video series that's going to be me going over my trade recaps throughout the day, just breaking down price action, going over my thought process as price is unfolding, and just kind of going over my executions, my exits, and the overall price action for that session. So starting here on the weekly chart, today is June 25th. Today's going to be a Wednesday. We're going to be identifying our initial trading direction for the week. We're looking at how price came down, swept this sell side liquidity. We see that we came up, ran through this bearish fair value gap right here, invalidating that bearish order flow, creating this bullish fair value gap right here as we ran up through this high. This is actually a monthly bearish fair value gap right here that you see we invert, closing through, running through this weekly high as well, up until this little weekly fair value gap that we're in right now. So overall, price swept this sell side. We're invalidating this bearish order flow. We are creating our bullish order flow right here as we run up towards this overall buy side liquidity at these highs right here. So our overall impression on the weekly is that we are looking for price to continue expanding higher. I know that we have this little bearish weekly fair value gap, but we are still within this down close candle right here as this bullish order block. So what we're going to be needing to do is dropping down into the lower time frames to see how price reacts within this weekly bullish order block and this inversion monthly fair value gap. All right, so zooming in, we have gone from the weekly down here to the daily. And now what we're going to be doing is looking at what type of supporting price levels or price arrays could potentially support price to that upside. We see that we have this inversion monthly fair value gap right here, and we have this daily sell side liquidity right here. So these are all higher time frame levels of interest that could potentially support price to the upside as we think price is reaching for this buy side. So we see that Monday price ran this sell side liquidity right here, tapped very briefly into this inversion monthly fair value gap. We expand higher on Monday. We expand higher on Tuesday as well through this high. So we are seeing at the daily level what we are expecting to see based off of that weekly bullish bias. We're seeing that price opened, ran lower into a discount array, and then we are expanding towards the opposite end of this range. Today being Wednesday, yesterday being Tuesday, having already ran this high, what we need to figure out now is whether or not we are going to be expanding higher through this high, or if we're going to be potentially having a small range day. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be going down into the lower time frames, the 4-hour and the 1-hour, to see any signatures in price and the structure unfolding. This is a closer look on the 4-hour. We see that this is that monthly bearish fair value gap that got inverted. Price opens up this new week open, dives lower, sweeping the sell side liquidity, tapping back into this now inverted monthly bearish fair value gap, and then we expand higher, taking out this bearish order block right here and running the high. So kind of just building this narrative up. We thought we had a bullish bias on the weekly. We see the daily is conforming to that narrative via Monday sweeping those sell side liquidity, dropping into that array below opening price, and then expanding to the opposite end of the range. On the 4-hour, we see a closer look of that. This sell side liquidity sweep right here into that inverted fair value gap, and then we close above this bearish order block. So we're kind of just building the narrative of us being bullish, and obviously we can see that we ran this high to kind of confirm from this focal point that we are going to be supporting price to the upside. So all in all, today is Wednesday, and all we're going to be doing is figuring out what price is likely to do today, now that we know that we are actually in a bullish weekly profile. Monday, Tuesday expanded. Wednesday is now the day in question. All right, zooming into the hour, we see today being Wednesday, the 25th. We see price has been slightly consolidating right here through Asia and so far London. We see that we have this shallow high and this shallow low right here on the hour, Nothing too much to kind of derive from this chart, just making sure that we're keeping up with important swing highs and swing lows and what price is doing in terms of bullish, creating bullish order flow or bearish order flow. Alrighty, now we are on to the 15-minute, and this is where we can actually start framing our setups and our intraday price action based on our higher time frame narrative. And just to kind of recap, on the weekly, we are thinking bullish prices. On the daily, we are seeing price being supported at those higher time frame key levels, being that inverted monthly fair value gap and that daily sell side liquidity. You see the prices ran up, taking out that daily high, and now we are on Wednesday, depicting whether we think we are continuing towards that overall weekly buy side liquidity or whether or not we are going to start retracing back into that daily range. So the 15-minute right here, this is 9:30 right here, right at open. We're going to mark out a couple key levels before we get into actually replaying today's price action. The key levels that I like to mark out are going to be Asia high and low, as well as London high as low, and then previous day's high and low. See that we have this previous day's high all the way up here. It's been ran. We have Asia low like right here. We have London low. Then we see that London high has been taken. And then you're also going to want to note any imbalances within that 15-minute, as the 15-minute is kind of like that happy medium time frame where you need to be aware for lower time frame trades, but it's also not going to affect the lower time frame in such a sense if you are, for example, doing scalping. So these are the key levels that we're looking for. These are where we expect a large portion of liquidity to be residing, especially these London and Asian lows. And this is how we frame our morning session in order to see the market for a trade setup. So now that we've come to the market here at 9:30, what we are tasked with doing is blending in our higher time frame narrative from that weekly expected profile down to that expected daily bias, and then down through the lower time frames like the 4-hour, 1 hour for that price structure. One thing that comes into play when you start looking into the intraday price action is the daily profile and more or less the power of three. What you see here is that it looks like price opened through Asia and London, consolidating relatively within this range. And then right here towards the opening of New York, we ran into a premium above previous day's high. So taking this information and blending it with the higher time frame narrative, we know that we are bullish on the higher time frame, but we do know that we have expanded to the top end of that range, being the daily high. We do know that we have expanded higher within current day's range, taking out previous day's high, and we have all this resting sell side below. So even though we are relatively bullish on the higher time frames, you still need to understand where you are within that weekly profile on the daily chart and where you are in the lower time frames in that daily profile. So all of this is framing the idea that we are bullish, but that we would see the potential of price running much lower, potentially through these lows, before going higher. And again, that's because our higher time frame is bullish, but our lower time frames are showing us that we have significantly ran buy side through previous day's high, through that overall daily high, and then we have edged into a premium for today's price action with all of these relative equal lows, sell side liquidity sitting down at the opposite end of that range. So this is framing for me in my mind as I'm going through the day that today could potentially see a large move lower. So we see price opens right here at 9:30. We're going to actually go through the price action now and watch price print. Perfect. We see price opens, runs this high, and then we immediately close below this series of up close candles. This would be considered a change in the state of order flow. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be entering into a sell setup. That gets us to our 1 to 2 risk to reward. We're going to see how this plays out now. This is that 15-minute fair value gap that we had highlighted in our initial framing of the morning session. We see that we have this fair value gap created now that has now been retraced into. Price begins to push lower here. We see this strong reaction. This bearish fair value gap, this bearish order flow is holding strong, giving us conviction in the trade. Price continues on. We see that we are just kind of diving into this bearish order block. This is where a lot of new traders, even myself sometimes now, get a little bit worried with price, seeing that big bullish candle right here, thinking that could potentially stop you out. Price just does its thing, comes up, forms that swing high, starts to run lower. You see that we had ran higher. This big bullish candle, we come down, we negate that. That's further confluence for you. Runs lower. Now we are towards the bottom portion of that 15-minute fair value gap. Closes below. And at this point, you can be pretty confident that we are reaching towards this sell side liquidity right here. So we're just waiting, letting it go, letting it go. And what we see here is price closes, runs out sell side liquidity, and we get in our profit for 612 profit for about, that's about 54 to about 40. All right, sweet. So just about 14 points, somewhere in the ballpark. But regardless, this was the framework for my trade today. It was seeing that we had ran this high on the daily chart, that we were in a premium for the current day with all of this consolidation. So using the power of three, looking at the sell side resting below this accumulation, I was expecting for this accumulation, manipulation, and distribution below these lows, even though this was against my higher time frame bias, being that the weekly I am thinking is still going to be expanding potentially higher. This was just being aware of where we are on the daily chart in relation to that weekly profile, and where we are intraday in relation to that daily bias as well, in terms of those premium discounts and where resting liquidity resides. So this was just a, albeit longer than expected, review for my first video, but this was hopefully insightful and gave you a little bit of insight into my trade executions and my trading framework.